Hi everyone, good evening. It's really nice to see all of you here. Thank you for coming to the Zayin Adar event, which is now happening on Tet Vav Adar, the 16th of Adar instead, due to the weather. And we are very happy to be having this conversation. I'm very happy to be here to learn more about the history of the relationship between BJ, which has been celebrating its bicentennial, and Plaza Jewish Community Center, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary in its current incarnation. And you might wonder why, or maybe not, because you're here, like why would someone go to a program about a funeral home? I have found in my work and in my life that some of the most meaningful moments are in spaces where you get to learn about the life of another person, even someone you didn't know, and the lessons that they imparted to their children or grandchildren that I can take into my own heart, and just being a presence for someone at that time of loss and that time of spiritual and emotional need. That's the work of the Chevra Kadisha, and that is really the work of Plaza in a way that is different from so many other places where one could have this life cycle moment. So I'm excited to welcome Stephanie, Garry, and from Executive Director? Vice President of Plaza Jewish Community Center, and you will hear more from our esteemed panel about their role in the creation and the sustaining of Plaza, and the role that it plays in the community on the Upper West Side. This is also the Helen Radin Memorial Lecture, and so I'm going to invite Roly to say a few words about Helen and who she was and why this event every year is named after her. So thank you, all of you, for being here and the work that you do. And thanks to everyone for being here. We hope it is an inspiring and uplifting evening.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shuli. I just want to say a few words about Helen Radin, because we have many years ago decided to name the program of the Zayin Adar, which celebrates Zayin Adar. For those who don't know, is according to the tradition the date of the birth of Moshe and the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. The original Moshe was born and died according to the tradition the same day, and it's the 7th of Adar. And there is a tradition, long tradition, that the Chevra Kadisha in every community gets together and in many ways is celebrated for the mitzvot that they do on this day, Zayin Adar. Zayin Adar last week was a blizzard, and so we moved it to this week. But we've named our Zayin Adar program, and usually a lecture with a gathering of the Chevra in Helen's memory. Helen came to this community from a different synagogue. She came to work here in 1996. She was Marcelo and my assistant, and she was a wonderful person. She was warm. She was really a great staff person, but she became part of the community and part of our families, and we became part of hers. And her life was transformed when she became part of BJ. She really became part of the community and part of like a family. And I mean, many times I had to say to Helen, I already have a mother, you know, because she was so protective and so wonderful, and she was giving me all sorts of advice. But truly, she was devoted to creating community. She opened her home so many times for us, and she was also very devoted, and she deeply understood the role of the Chevra Kadisha and what it means for community to have a Chevra Kadisha and to participate. And so she did it for many years, and I think in tribute to her commitment and all of what she gave, we decided as a community to name this program, this evening, for Helen and to perpetuate her memory this way.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for framing and bringing her into this space. Beautiful. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Garry. I am the Executive Vice President of Plaza Jewish Community Chapel, and it is such an honor to be in this sacred space. You know, on 91st in Amsterdam, I have the pleasure of working in sacred space every day, but to be here in the BJ community is a gift for me, so thank you so much. I want to say a couple of things about tonight. First of all, we are recording this because we will use this as a podcast episode for Plaza's podcast, which is called Exit Strategy. So you may hear me go in and out of being here and talking to people out there for when people listen to the podcast. So don't think I'm losing it. I know what I'm doing. But I want you to know that this conversation is so appropriate for everything we talk about on the podcast. But I think we're going to be touching on really important pieces of Jewish life and what makes end-of-life ritual so incredibly sacred and profound. So first, let me please introduce everybody who is on our panel tonight. So we have Dr. Jeannie Blaustein. I have to say you have been a board member of Plaza since 2021. In case you didn't know that, I'm here to remind you of that. We also have Joel Cases, who is a founding board member of Plaza, so that takes us back 25 years. Joel is also on our executive committee and chair of our building committee. We have Bob Cantor, who has been a board member since 2019, in case you didn't know. And Bob is on our executive committee and is an integral part of Plaza's business. And we also have, of course, Irv Rosenthal, who is a founding board member. Irv was the treasurer of Plaza for the first 10 years, and he is, dare I say, one of the sage voices always around the table. And of course, we have Roly, Rabbi Matalon, who is a founding board member as well. So tonight we gather at a meaningful moment. 25 years of Plaza's sacred service to the community, and of course, the spirit of Zayin Adar, the day in our tradition that we talked about, associated with the life and death of Moses. Zayin Adar has long been connected to the holy work of the Chevra Kadisha, and please know, we care deeply for those of you who participate in that sacred holy work, because that work is the most sacred as you care for the dead with dignity, humility, and of course, deep, deep reverence. It is a day that reminds us that how we accompany one another at the end of life really speaks to and reflects who we are at our very core. 25 years ago, a small group of visionary leaders, including Roly, and members of our founding board, asked a courageous question. What would it look like to create a funeral chapel rooted not in transaction, but in community? Not in anonymity, but in kavod, in honor. They imagine something different, something sacred, something owned by and accountable to the community. So tonight, it is not simply about marking time. It is about honoring courage. The courage to build something new, to think about what it looks like in the future, and the courage to evolve it. In our tradition, Moses leads the people towards the promised land, but does not enter it. Zayin Adar reminds us that leadership is not always about personal arrival. It is about building something that endures beyond us. So for 25 years, Plaza has carried forward that sacred responsibility, holding families in their most vulnerable moments, elevating conversations around end of life, and serving with steadiness, compassion, and integrity. Our funeral directors are my heroes. They truly are at the heart of what we do. I admire their commitment not only to their work, but to the mission of Plaza, and I am honored to work by their side. As I said, this conversation is being recorded for an episode of Exit Strategy, allowing this reflection to extend beyond this room and become part of a broader dialogue about legacy, about leadership, and of course, about sacred service. It feels especially fitting, not just to me, but that Plaza's story is shared in a broader way. So we'll reflect on where we began, what has endured, and what has changed, and what legacy we are shaping for generations to come. May this conversation honor those who had the vision, those who had the vision to begin, those who have sustained it, and those who will carry it forward. And I thank all of you for being part of this sacred journey, so thank you. Okay, now to the fun stuff. I think I'm gonna start with you, Roly, because I want to talk about sacred beginnings. And I'd love you to talk about 25 years ago, what was that like? What was the need? How did you discover that there was a need?
So 25 years ago, I had been a rabbi already for 15 years in this community, in this neighborhood. And the landscape was that there was one very well-known funeral home in the neighborhood where we had most of our funerals were there, except if they were out of town, out of Manhattan and other boroughs, but most of our funerals were handled through this funeral home, which was very professional. They were very efficient, but as you alluded in your introduction, relationship was very transactional. It was distant. It was profit was what motivated people there. Good people, but everything was handled with a certain distance. You know, professionalism was this. There was no sense of embrace. There was no sense of warmth. And also, I have to say, there was no depth of knowledge or of a sense of Jewish values around end of life and death. There was no sense that people there, who I believe are good people, but there was no sense that they were operating from that place, not from a place of community and not from a place of deep knowledge and embodiment of Jewish values around death and dying. And I think there was a sense that I think also practically there was a sense, that it was very expensive to die, and many people couldn't afford it. And so we felt, there has to be another way also that will relate to people who, first of all, lower the prices by eliminating profits and make it affordable for everybody. Those who can pay more will choose something more elaborate and will pay more, but those who can't will have access to a place where they will be related to with the same dignity. So for all those reasons, I think there was a desire to try something different. And I think as Plaza opened and we started working with Plaza, I think the difference became really very significant.
I think so. I can only imagine what that conversation was like around the table, because as I said initially, that was a very, very courageous jump to take. It really was. Irv, I want to just move to you for a moment. I want to talk about what felt, I'm sure you're going to say everything, but what felt risky in those conversations?
You're right.
Everything.
Everything. Everything. Because that, as you described and as Roly described it, was definitely the motivation behind starting Plaza, but it was still also had to be a business, and it had to operate and had to generate enough revenue to cover its expenses, and it cost. Plaza was purchased from the largest funeral home operator in the world, which it was part of an antitrust settlement in 1999. And it cost $3 million to buy it and sort of get it up and running. And we had $1 million in grants from UJA and the Jewish Communal Fund, and the other $2 million came from a mortgage and loans, interest-free loans from a group of philanthropists. And we had to pay back that money. So we needed to generate enough revenue to be able to do that. And at the same time, we were committed to lowering the price of funerals, which we did immediately. We cut the price by 20%. But we didn't, the number of funerals that Plaza was doing immediately before we acquired it was not nearly enough to be able to cover all these costs. So the risk was the community wasn't going to respond. What we thought was a problem, and this was the solution to it, people weren't actually going to respond to that. But they did. So we went from doing, Plaza did a little under 300 funerals the year before it became a community-owned funeral home, and it now does over 600 funerals in an average year. So, and that just made all the difference. So there was definitely a risk there, but it worked out great, and we paid back all the money, and it was good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, and here we are 25 years later. I'm curious to know, so 1999 is when it was, SCI had to divest their last acquired chapel.
Correct.
So from 1999 till the doors opened in 2001, what took place there? I mean, how many meetings? A group of people met and...
we put together a board. We had to raise the money. We had to go to UJA and to the Jewish Communal Fund and pitch the idea of a community-owned funeral home. There's only one, as far as we know, there's only one other community-owned funeral home in the country. That's in San Francisco, and it's some very different model than Plaza.
Right.
So we were really sort of writing the script as we were working. We didn't have any basis to compare. SCI, which was the multinational corporation that owned Plaza before, actually had a contract to sell it to a non-Jewish funeral home operator from Staten Island. And the Attorney General, it was Elliot Spitzer, rejected that transaction, which is what gave the community-owned group the opportunity to come in. We matched the price, and so they really had no choice but to sell it to us. So that's what was going on from 1999, when Elliot Spitzer brought the antitrust action, to March of 2001 when we opened the doors.
Beautiful, beautiful. Joel, tell me, do you remember back then, those 25 years ago?
I was. I was at the time the chair of the board of Dorot, and very involved in Dorot, and Dorot was a member organization and really believed in this move from the Jewish community, and asked me to be on the board and take over. We all should realize that SCI still owns lots of funeral parlors in New York. They own Riverside, they own Campbell's, and they are, as you could say, our competition. But when you look even at if you look at the Plaza website, you will see all the prices And you will see that Plaza has managed throughout all this time to be obviously the lowest cost provider, but still with complete professionalism, complete dignity. The funerals there are just beautiful. But the price is 25% lower than, say, Riverside, and even 50% lower than Campbell's, which is clearly the high-cost provider. It was, the board meetings all took place at UJA. Irv was always there and giving the financial report, but from the beginning, it was so clear that Plaza was a place that met a need in our community. It was a place we could all feel comfortable with. There was full tradition there, full dignity for all of us. And I very much felt that. I very much felt that we all had something to be proud of.
Well, one of the things that I just want to note, and you touched on this, Joel, was that when I joined Plaza and we started to promote the funeral chapel, what astonished me was how hard it was to find out how much a funeral costs. That was just like mind-boggling. So I'm really happy to say that, as Joel mentioned, we not only post our prices, but the prices of our competition, because we want to be completely transparent about what takes place when you're planning a funeral. So I'm really happy about that. Bob, please.
I just wanted to add that for the past 25 years, we've been self-sustaining. We don't ask for grants from anybody or donations from anybody. Everything, it pays for itself, which is kind of remarkable.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. Irv, just want to go back to you for a moment. When we opened our doors in 2001, why was that the magic moment to do it in March of 2001? Anything specifically happened that we picked that date?
No, that's just when when we got done with all the paperwork, and you know, it is a service to the community, but it's, as I said, it's also a business. So we had to go through all the business stuff to get. We had to get registered with the state as a funeral home operator, and we had to get, we had to negotiate a contract with SCI, and we had to arrange the financing and all those things.
So just want to touch on the fact of, as we mark this 25th year, did anybody have like a vision that this might last a long time? Or was it really like a day-to-day, month-to-month operation?
No, in preparation for tonight, I went back and I actually looked at the case statement that we put together.
Beautiful.
In 2000 to go out to our donors and lenders. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed by how well we've done. So if I can take a minute,
Please.
I just want to go through it.
Beautiful.
So just by way of a little history that Roly also alluded to, up until the late 19th century, the Chevra Kadisha was responsible for funerals. There were no such things as funeral homes. And when funeral homes began around 1900, they were generally family owned. So they were in fact part of the community. In fact, that's how Riverside started. It was a family business up until it was bought by SCI. Yep. And it wasn't really until the last third of the 20th century that the funeral home business became this multinational corporate thing that was really disconnected from the community, and that, as Roly said, was basically profit driven. And the question was, how much can we sell people, and how expensive can we make a funeral so that we can make more profit? So this sort of set the tone for the principles that the board agreed on before, when we started. It was actually interesting. The first one was that the Jewish funeral experience should invite individuals to explore the Jewish tradition rather than turning them off to it. And this was a time, I don't know, there's many people in this room look like they probably remember 25 years ago. But it was a time in the Jewish community when there was a tremendous concern about unaffiliated Jews. That was like a huge focus. And So one of the actual parts of our mission was recognizing that the funeral was sometimes one of the very few points of contact between the Jewish community and these unaffiliated individuals, to give them an experience that might make them want to learn more.
Wow.
So I think
Yeah.
I think we've done that.
Yeah.
The second was that it's in our name, community, right? We're the Jewish Community Chapel, and we wanted to acknowledge the fact that we live in a very pluralistic community, and while there is certainly a strong Jewish tradition about how to do funerals, we recognize that there's also a diversity in the community, and we wanted to be responsive to that. And again, that's created some tension over the years at times, but I think I think we've successfully done that to the point where across the denominational spectrum, we have buy-in that Plaza is the kind of place where, regardless of what your practice is, it's a good and comfortable place to do a funeral. The third one was, as everybody's alluded to, I think that products and services should be fairly priced, and that we should not be pushing people to spend more. We actually push people. If we push people to do anything, we push people to do the simplest kind of funeral that you can do, and not to have all the add-ons. If people want them, they're there, but our default is, plain pine box. No need for any unnecessary embellishments. The fourth one was that we recognized that when people are burying a loved one, that there are often other needs that can be addressed by social service agencies in the community. In the community, and we wanted to be a link between the family and the agencies in the Jewish community that could provide services to them if they needed them, and I think that's something that we do. And the final thing was that we wanted any surplus funds that we generated to be reinvested in the community, and I know that's something we're going to talk about later, I'm sure, and that we've done in spades. So I think we've accomplished basically all the things that we set out to do. So.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. I'm so happy you brought that. I wasn't aware of that letter, so that's quite special for sure. For those of you who may not know, I want to tell you the mission of Plaza, just so it's very clear. The mission is to ensure that every member of the community receive a dignified burial, to take the profit motive out of the equation, and as Irv just alluded to provide education and bereavement support around end-of-life conversation. So we do all three every day. And I'm pleased to say that before I came here tonight, I was teaching downtown fifth graders all about taking the mystery out of death. And that is one of 50 educational programs that we do in the community yearly. So I want to just digress for a minute. Jeannie, I want to get your voice in here for sure. I want to talk about what's evolved, what's stayed the same, what's endured. So talk to me for a moment about what sacred responsibility looks like to you.
Well, that's a big question.
I know.
And I would actually echo something that you said in your opening remarks, which is that you used the word accompany. And when I think about sacred responsibility, particularly in the context around end of life and death and dying, I think very much that it is an honor and a responsibility to accompany those who are making a physical transition as well as those who are making a psychological transition in the sense that they're losing a core element, component, loved one, piece of themselves, really. And I think what's so touching is that it's interesting, I didn't know the history, Irv, that you shared, or about, although it makes sense that Hever Kadisha was the place in which the Jewish community cared for our dead. But it does make sense to me that accompaniment is an ancient tradition, and that the sacredness of that privilege is something deep in our DNA. I think the ways in which the Jewish community understands what it means to accompany the bereaved extends also to the ways in which we accompany those who have died, and the shomer role, the role of the guard, the watchman who sits outside the room while a body is being prepared or waiting for burial is just one example of that kind of sacred accompaniment and sacred responsibility.
It's profoundly, profoundly beautiful. One of the things that I'm really proud of at Plaza, well, I'm proud of a lot of things, but one of the things I'm proud of is that 3 years ago, we established the first Reform New York community, Hever Kadisha. We brought this act of burial and ritual to the Reform community. I can say that as someone who grew up in a classical Reform congregation in the Midwest. While we were very, very engaged in Jewish life, when it came to Jewish ritual, especially around end of life, I didn't know a thing. I'm thrilled to say that more and more people are embracing this sacred ritual and understanding the place that it has in this whole process as we accompany, and as we accompany our families through this as well. So thank you for using that word. It is special. Bob, tell me, what do you think sacred responsibility looks like?
Well, I haven't told you this story yet, but last week a BJ member called me and said, how do I make a donation to Plaza? They did this.
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
I gave him your number.
Okay, good.
Their cousin in Massachusetts was doing a graveside small burial of a family member, and they didn't know which way to turn. So this BJ member said, let me go to Plaza, and went there, walked out with black ribbons for Kriya, some kippot, a candle, and a few other things, at no charge. And she was just like blown away that they were there for her. They didn't ask any questions. Plaza was not part of the funeral. And my answer was, well, that's why community is our middle name. And I think that's very indicative of how we are there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. And people do come to us, whether it's for small yortzeit candles or for whatever, and it's wonderful for people to walk in our doors when they don't need us, and it's wonderful when they walk in need, for sure. So Joel, talk to me about what you think sacred responsibility looks like now. I think that's really important.
Well, I see it as, I feel the board of Plaza, with the guiding light of Plaza, you could say, the people who take responsibility, is part of that true responsibility. And responsibility of not only, I guess, on one side to this business, but on the other side to the community, and to maintain this, and to be sure it is maintained. And in fact, that's why right now the board is in the midst of determining what type of renovation to do of this building. And I assume many of you have been in the building, and it needs some work. So that's part of our sacred responsibility, is to figure it out and to set this place up, make sure we're set up for the next 25 years. We're done with, we've done, first 25 years have really been quite amazing and quite beautiful. But now we're at a point where we have to look forward, and the building needs work, and part of our sacred responsibility is taking care of this building for the next group. And because we cover our costs but don't have extra costs, we're also going to be trying to raise the money, figure out what it costs, get architects and all that stuff to do a renovation so the building is really set for the next 25 years. When we, I guess when we bought Plaza, there were minimal renovations done for this building. The last real renovation was in, I think, 1985. So, 40 years, and well, you know that year well, 1985, 86, right? And so it's time, and I think we all feel that responsibility to move forward.
For sure. Thank you for mentioning that. Roly, want to talk to you a little bit about the conversation around death. How has it changed over these past 25 years? I have my perspective on that, but I'd love to hear yours. You went off? It's okay.
You mean in terms of the community?
And I would say the conversation around death in general today versus 25 years ago.
Well, it's a much more open conversation. In many ways, the work that Jeannie did with Reimagine has been enormous, and that's one piece of an opening. But in our community, I will just talk about our community. In our community, the fact that when we established the Chevra Kadisha, people started volunteering. People started seeing up front, not just death, but everything that it takes place around end of life and all the care for the deceased and for the family and accompanying and the Shiva and the Shloshim and the Yortzeit. I mean, we're very, very deeply steeped in this community. And so I think the conversation became a very familiar conversation here, a very, it's part of what it means to be part of this community in many ways. It's something that is it's just natural, right? I mean, it's not something off to the side or something that is secret or behind the door that only some people talk about. So, there's an embrace of that as part of life, as it should be. And I think it's also in many ways exemplified by the relationship that we have and that many of us in our community, and certainly those of us, rabbis and so on, have with the staff at Plaza.
Yes.
I walk into Riverside. It's been 40 years. Every time I walk in, sir, may I help you? May I direct you? I'm Rabbi Matalon. Yeah. You go into Plaza, it's like family, right? I mean, we know everybody knows us. It's like we're embraced. It's so natural. It's home. It's home. And so it's not like this alien place, distant place, foreign place. It's very much part of what it is to be part of the community, part of a synagogue. Life and death, there are births here and there are funerals here. And that's all part of the same cycle in the same community. It's not separate. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, it's so natural and organic and integrated. And I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally would agree. And I believe that we've been able to institute programming and grants to the community that have made a difference. What Matters Caring Conversations about End of Life was a grant that Plaza gave to the community along with the JCC of Manhattan, the New Jewish Home, and School of Pastoral Counseling at JTS. And that program really changed many congregations in terms of conversations, and I know Sally Kaplan is here tonight, who had a big hand in that in the community, and what a profound difference that made, again, amplifying this conversation around end of life, which actually brings us closer to living, I believe, every day, every day. Bob?
I just think it's important to note that it doesn't end after the funeral. We have some limited space now, and we'll have more once Joel finds the money to renovate the building.
Or Irv.
Oh, Irv.
Joel's building the building, and
Oh, right.
Irv's raising the money
Sorry.
to do it.
Uh,
Yeah.
We're going to have more space because people have asked if there's a place that they can sit Shiva for reasons, you know, they don't want to do it at home. So that's part of what we do. We also, when did we start with monuments? A year ago?
Almost two.
Almost for the last 2 years, we have a monument business.
Yes.
It's a business.
It's
Yes.
a business. It actually is helping the bottom line. So it's kind of a one-stop place. And we do follow-up with every single client that's ever been
Yep.
through the doors.
Yes, absolutely. And what we're trying to do from the beginning through the end, we're trying to be there for families at every point along the way. And that includes also providing bereavement support at no cost and being a conduit for ways that people can connect with the community. Roly, Moses never entered the promised land, right? So, yeah, what happened there? He never made it into the promised land. So talk a little bit about what that teaches us about leadership and building institutions. How does that resonate?
Well, it's you do your part. You have a certain time that is allotted to you by your Creator. You do the most. You do, and then Moses prepared also the following generation. So it's for each one of us to keep teaching, to keep instructing people, to prepare leaders to continue to take over from us. And I mean, this happens should happen in every part of life. And in this respect too, and to keep growing, to keep educating. Hope actually that each new generation reaches new heights, that they embrace new challenges, not that they repeat what we've done and keep doing what we've done, but they enhance and they grow and they build on what the previous generation has done. In this case, for all of us who've been in this in the leadership in different ways of Plaza, when the time will come and we have to prepare people for the next to take over, that the hope is that people will surpass what we've done, and that's the hope.
We started in 2001 with 21 board members. We now have just over 60 board members. I know, wow, that's a number. 27 are clergy. And the idea was we wanted to ensure that everyone had access to who we are. Everyone needed to know about who we are. And it's my responsibility to make sure all the board members are taken care of. So I think I spend a lot of my time doing that. But I want to ask you one final question before we open it up to people who are here tonight. And that is, when Plaza celebrates 50 years, I won't be in my job, I just want to say that. Even though I've been there for 24, I'm not going to be there in another 25. But when Plaza celebrates 50 years, what do you hope people say about this moment? What does that look like? I'll start with you, Jeannie.
Well, I guess one thing I hope that people say is that this was a moment of, a second moment of important vision, that the recognition that actually values, Jewish values and community, and the conversations around dying and living were recognized as central to what it is that we want to have and be as a Jewish community. And that the recognition of that has prompted a kind of another leap of faith into the future, and that what is being prepared as Joel meets with architects and the board looks at blueprints is something that will continue to serve the community in that welcoming and supportive way.
Beautiful, thank you. Joel?
So I think the people sitting here in 25 years will be proud. I think they'll be very proud that the mission of Plaza has continued. The building is held up. And we remain a community-owned, nonprofit funeral chapel that prioritizes dignity and tradition.
Thank you. Bob?
And maybe we could be a model for the same thing happening in other cities. It'd be amazing for people to say, oh, you know what, that's a really good idea. Maybe we should do it too.
Great, yes. Irv?
Yeah, I hope that people will say that we remain consistent with our principles, but we evolved as the community evolved.
Beautiful, thank you.
I would say in another 25 years, 50 years, after the founding of Plaza, people say, what, was there something else before this? Like, how could it be?
I think you're right. That would be wonderful.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
You mentioned earlier that education and information are an important part of the larger mission. And I do want to take my hat off to Sally Kaplan, who was the director of What Matters. For those of you who don't know, it is an initiative to help members of the Jewish community write and decide what kinds of advanced care conditions and choices they would want to make for themselves at the end of life. And all I can say, I was privileged to be a part of that program, and I hope and believe that that element of education and outreach and conversation, your beautiful podcast, will continue, because I do think that, to your earlier question, how has the conversation changed? It changes actually through conversation. And I will say, actually, this is kind of embarrassing, Rabbi, I have a confession. I actually had my first pre-planning conversation with a member of your staff about a week ago. Not just for me, but for me and my husband. And it was not only painless, it was delightful, it was encompassing, I felt completely able, because I've been in this space for many, many years now, working in end of life, but what was most moving to me was how embraced I felt. And I think having those conversations as a part of our daily bread, so to speak, is part of actually what makes Plaza a success, is because people are primed and more comfortable with the whole idea. And I hope that in 25 years, people are also feeling grateful for that element as well.
Beautiful. I appreciate you saying that. And I'm hopeful that, to your point, that in another 25 or 50 years, people will go, wasn't there always just a community funeral chapel? What else is there? So I want to thank you all. But first, if there are any questions, okay, Billy? Sure. Thank you. Any question? Oh, great. Oh, Shuli.
First of all, thanks to all of you for your work in creating and sustaining what is such an amazing institution, and for sharing more about the history. One of the things I learned tonight was that you do 50 educational programs a year. I would love to hear more about where are those happening? You said 5th grade. What does that look like? What are you talking about?
Death. I'm talking about death. No, what I talk about, so these really have organically evolved through the years. It was initially a way to offer our services to the community. If you wanted to bring, we do a dozen programs a year for Central Synagogue for various programs that they do, and they have a class that's all about exploring Judaism, and there are couples who come from different faith backgrounds, and they come to Plaza to learn about Jewish ritual at the end of life, take a tour of the chapel, go downstairs to see where taharas are done. They meet a shomer. They have an immersive experience. And it has just multiplied and multiplied. So when I teach fifth graders, it's all about taking the mystery out of death, because as I say to them, we all are part of a life cycle. And the first question I ask is, how many of you have ever been to a funeral? 90% of them raise a hand. Fortunately for great-grandparents. And today, great example, we were talking about when we're at the graveside and we're shoveling earth into the grave. And one of the students actually said to me, you know, you take the back of the shovel first. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And she said, I don't know. They just told me to do it, and I did it. So I think what we're doing by doing all of these classes, and we also do a program called How to Get Your House in Order, making sure estates and trusts are in place, that funeral arrangements are in place, because we all know when we don't make those arrangements, we're leaving an enormous burden on those we care about the most. So as we talk about all of these different topics, we find ourselves really fitting into many pegs on the board. So it's just multiplied and multiplied. And I have students from HUC coming to spend a day with us, as I do from YU and JTS, and so a lot. But thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the response to your podcast for the wider Jewish community, because as you said, this model, which is so extraordinary, is a one-off.
It is. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm thinking about trends that I hear about sort of in the outside world of people just having cremation, other alternatives, just not part of this. And just so, in addition to those education programs that you run, I'm just curious in terms of educating and being sensitive to the outside world, how that plays out.
Sure. Well, first of all, the podcast has been an incredible vehicle for Plaza. You know, I thought it would be a good idea, and we have close to 40,000 followers for our podcast now, and so a number of people will learn about BJ here in New York City on the Upper West Side. But it allows us to talk about everything. And there are whimsical aspects. We've had Nick Kroll, who many people know is a stand-up comedian. We've had Nick on, and we've talked about how do you talk to children about death. So, you know, it runs the gamut. In all of our classes for adults, cremation always comes up. It is handled, I teach in tandem with clergy always, and I am always quick to defer the conversation to the clergy. But I will tell you, Plaza was set up, as Irv knows and Joel knows so well, along with Roly, to be of service to the entire community. It was made as a decision on day one that cremation would not be advertised. Cremation would not be something that was discussed. Yet, if a community member reaches out to us and asks for information about cremation, we will supply them with the information and ensure that a proper cremation is done. The reality is that cremation numbers are nationally quite high. They are not as high up here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, but we've definitely seen an uptick in that. One of the interesting things that we've noted as of late is that people are asking a lot about green burial. Now, I'm the first to say to anybody, the original traditional Jewish burial is your original green burial. Yet I will tell you that that is not enough for some people. So I'm pleased to say that on Plaza staff, we have a certified green burial specialist who's a funeral director. And there are some, there are some nuances when it comes to that. So there's a lot of other discussion out there, and we again want to be that community resource.
Could I add one quick thing? It's me.
Oh, hi.
No.
Hi, okay.
No, it's me.
Oh, hi. I'm looking all over. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi, I just wanted to add one quick thing. A number of people over the last 10 to 15 years have chosen, obviously not those who want a traditional Jewish burial, but in the spirit of preserving the planet, have chosen cremation, thinking that it is a gentler burden on the planet. In fact, that is actually not really the case. So it's important to know that the consequences of the burning and metals in the body and all kinds of other things actually are not so good for the planet. And in terms of the commitment to Jewish tradition, it's just, I think we take our environmental values seriously, but it's just something I think it's important to know.
Absolutely, and whenever I teach these classes and I mention that, everyone is stunned. They can't believe, they thought, oh, I thought this was so good for the environment, and I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah, yes.
Can you tell me how you deal with interfaith families? You had mentioned it or alluded to it. Let's say one partner is Jewish, of course, and the other is not, in terms of bereavement or anything else.
Of course, sure. Interesting, today with my 5th graders, 2 students asked me the same question. Clearly, they had come from a family with different faiths, and it was a beautiful thing to be able to say, everyone is part of our community. The one thing we do not do is we do not bury on Shabbat. So even though our doors are open to be there for families and, of course, to be there for those who have died, we do not perform services on Shabbat. But there have been times when you have families with mixed faiths and someone will say, my minister who I grew up with, I would like him to participate with a rabbi, and it's always up to the clergy to work that out. But we pride ourselves on meeting people where they're at. While we are happy to offer suggestions, we don't want to get in the way of what's going to speak to them and make them feel whole and okay in this moment. When it comes to bereavement services, we have a rabbi/chaplain along with a social worker who run our bereavement support groups. So we're sure to speak to everyone and serve everyone who comes to us. Also, I just want to mention every funeral chapel, including Plaza Jewish Community Chapel, is governed by New York State Health Department. And so we are not allowed to ever turn anyone away who wants to come into our doors and have a service. And so legally, we're not allowed to do that. But the truth is the majority of families we serve are Jewish, but there are those who are not as well. Whatever you want.
So, thank you so much for this presentation. I feel like so rich from being here. but that's not what I want to share.
That's okay.
What I want to share is almost nobody knows this about me. Maybe Bob Cantor knows it, not the rabbi, not Irv, but one day my father came home from the Kremenitzer Society with 4 graves. And I've had this for my whole, till I was old enough to receive my father with the 4 graves. And of course, thank God I've grown older, as probably many of us here have. And I have thought a lot about the fact that I think I should be buried with BJ, which is where I felt my family really emerged. So I would have 4 graves. So this is something I think that I have heard people say they have no grave. What should they do? Could they buy a grave for me? I mean, that's way over my legal head. But my sister, I know, will be buried with her husband, and my mother and father together. So that leaves 2 for me. And if I ever finish my decision making and actually go to BJ, wherever I'm going, whether Brooklyn or New Jersey, where I know no one, this is a big thing I think about.
Yeah, a lot of people have that situation and think about it. It depends on the cemetery. There are many restrictions, or the society, and the best thing to do is to talk to one of our directors about that. They would have really solid information.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
We're there. We're there for you.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you, because by some unusual luck, I happened to pre-plan my funeral with you, and I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing of the depth of the philosophy behind it, and it's just amazing to learn all this. And I had a friend who said, I'm going to Plaza to you want to come? So I said, okay, I'll come with you. I came with her, and I was so impressed. I said, well, I want to do that too, because I did some funerals for my mother and my father and my brother, and I realized that death is really a responsibility for those that live, and to help plan, because there's so much grieving and so on, that anything you could do to make it easier for everyone, you should do. And so that's what I did. And I'm just amazed to learn about BJ starting, Plaza, and so I knew nothing about this. So I just feel very lucky to have stumbled in the right direction. So thank you so much.
I'm so
this.
happy.
This is a very important evening, and I wish everyone could hear it. And I want to learn about your podcast, because I'll start listening to it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
For sure. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Do you want to just mention about pre-plan so people know what that is?
Sure. So I'll just take 2 minutes and I'll talk to you a little bit about what it is to pre-plan a funeral. I have done that, as has my husband, and many people I know have done this. You're in the process. So the whole idea with pre-planning a funeral is just that. It's to ensure, how about this, that you get to decide what you want. Think about that for a moment. You decide where you want to be buried, who you want to be buried next to or not, but you get to decide what you want, aside from the fact you're not leaving the burden on those you care about the most. But what happens when you pre-plan a funeral is that money is held in trust by New York State in pre-plan. The money does not go to the funeral chapel until the time of death. So if in fact you pre-plan a funeral today and you pay for it, and you don't die for 10 or 20 years, that's what we'll talk about. Here we are 20 years later. The interest that's earned in that pre-plan account goes to offset the increased fees that may happen over those years. So pre-plan is something that was started many years ago. Actually, when the chapel opened, there were some pre-plans for sure. It has blossomed dramatically for all the reasons that I just said. The last thing I'll say about that is my office is up on the 3rd floor, and I can't tell you how often I hear from the 1st floor, no, this is what Mom wanted. No, it's not. This is what she wanted. And that moment, that sacred moment when someone has died, becomes about something else. So it's important to think about. So. Oh, of course. Forget you.
So I just wanted to say, aside from BJ's staff, I am probably the one who has the most contact with the Plaza team than anybody else. And I just want to express my gratitude because no matter who I'm talking to, they are there for us. And I will also say, I think I'm usually on the phone, but at David Ellison's funeral, the whole team was present. And it's the best looking funeral team of directors you could imagine.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate that What Matters, the program in the Jewish community, was mentioned tonight. And I'm quite sure that there's no other community chapel in the country that has given out a grant in the community. And Plaza was unique in that way. And the enormous impact it had can't be stressed enough. And the gratitude to Plaza for seeding that is immense. I think over the 8.5 years that I had the privilege of directing the program, I think we touched thousands of people and held advanced care planning conversations in which people had the opportunity to think about what was important to them in life and what would be important to them at the end of life, and to think about if they were ever in a position where they couldn't speak for themselves, what they would want done for them and who would they trust to make those decisions for them. And I think that through our one-on-one conversations, our group conversations, over the years we had 20 synagogues, seminaries, and Jewish community centers that joined our ranks. As I said, we impacted many people, and now What Matters has been taken over by a national organization, Shomer Collective, and has a national reach. And I can guarantee you that every single conversation about What Matters that is offered mentions Plaza and mentions how we started and the unique giving of a community chapel. And most of the questions we get, or I would say a large percentage of the questions we get at the end of the presentations, are about burial and afterlife and what happens. And I'm really glad both Jeannie and Stephanie talked about Plaza's services in terms of pre-planning funerals, because that's not traditionally a part of advanced care planning, but it became a very integral part of what we did. And I think that fact that you offer those services and offer them free and offer them in such a gentle way as Jeannie described is something that needs to be really shouted far and wide, because it's an important part of what you do. So my gratitude from the community back to you for having the foresight to think about an innovative program and to help support it throughout the years. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally Kaplan.
Well, this question is going to be blunt, but I'm not interested in being buried. I'm not interested in cremation. I'm interested in being cut up for transplants and medical research. How can Plaza help me fulfill my desire?
Sure. So let me say, first of all, that organ donation, we have a podcast episode about organ donation, is something that is looked upon with great favor. All the denominations look upon it with great favor if people are interested in donating their organs. Interesting point and something to think about. If in fact you want to be an organ donor, that is a conversation you need to have with somebody who is your healthcare proxy. And why is that? Most often, when someone is at the point where organs need to be donated, they are not able to speak for themselves. A traumatic accident's taken place, a stroke or something has happened. So that's number one. Number two, if in fact you want to donate your body to science, if you want to donate tissues, etc., that can all be done in a pre-plan. So those directions are there, and you just have to ensure that somebody has that information and knows what your wishes are. Was that blunt enough for you? I'm good with blunt.
Hi, is it on? I'm wondering about medical aid in dying and where, since the law has been passed in New York, are there issues in terms of Jewish burial, in terms of, because essentially someone's, some people call it suicide, I don't consider it that. Is this a hard conversation, not hard for us, but is this a controversial issue in terms of, in the work that you're doing?
So it doesn't have anything to do with our work.
You should ask Roly.
I was going to say, it has more to do with his work. By the time we get the call, someone has died.
And
So
that's all that matters.
yeah.
Okay.
So
I don't want to answer this on one foot. It's a very delicate subject that needs, to look at it in a serious way. I don't want to answer on one foot.
Actually, Yeshivat Maharad is having a program on this, I think next week.
Yes.
I think it's next week.
And Shoma
Yeah.
Collective has been having, I mean, there's been a lot, Shoma Collective has done 2 out of 3 sessions on Zoom about it. So there's a lot.
The one at Maharad is on halakhic issues around
Well,
medical
they've
aid
been
and
doing
dying.
that. They've been
Yeah.
doing that also. Yeah. Okay.
I will ask a question, but I'll start with a statement. When my first husband died 42 years ago, it was only Riverside, and I remember his death was sudden, and I remember my then father-in-law offering to pay for the funeral, and I was wondering, like, what's the issue, until I saw the bill afterwards. And it was astounding, not something that I was able to deal with. My question is for the people, everyone here, I guess, is a BJ member or affiliated in some way, but I know people who are not affiliated. How would they find out about Plaza versus Riverside if they're not even part of the Jewish community? Yes, of the Jewish community, but not part of the Jewish community.
Yeah, that is, so here I am in front of my board members. I feel like my job's on the line here. How do I get the word out about Plaza? It's a process. Changing the culture, getting our name out there. First of all, the reality is people have to be open to hearing the story, understanding that this is a conversation that everybody needs to have. There are many people who don't want to have this conversation, so they don't hear about it. We have really reached out. I will tell you that we do regular programming with the JCC of Manhattan. We sponsor cemetery visits for the community. We do the same with DeRote. We try to be in places that are not just synagogue-oriented to get the name out about Plaza. I was just going to say, we're on WNYC, QXR, ABC, and 1010 Wins for 22 years. Crazy. have been sponsoring candle lighting on 1010 Winds. And we do that as a public service announcement. And, you know, we try to be as many places as we possibly can be, and yet there are people that still don't know our story. And so we're getting more traction. We're only 25 years old, but still we're 25 years old. So I'm kind of hoping in 50 years that everybody knows about Plaza, that I've done my job. So
And there's nothing like word of mouth, so tell your friends.
there you go. Yes, please, please. And by the way, I'm available for parlor meetings, so just so you know.
I just have a little question. What happens if someone dies that has a pre-plan, like myself, and you're traveling, you're out of the country, or you're in another state or something like that? Do you help with getting the body back?
Absolutely. Literally, Plaza is the only call you need to make, or somebody else who's with you if you've died.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay. Just want to say thank you. Beautiful conversation. Thank you to all of you. Really appreciate it. And all I always say is be well and take good care. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to all of the panelists and for the wonderful questions as well. I need to add one more thank you. I know she doesn't want it, but Billy DiStefano, who oversees all of the committees and volunteerism, the Chevra Kadisha, and the people who you will talk to or people in the community talk to when they have a loss, and who put together this whole program, wrangling people's calendars and then swiftly changing the date when there was a blizzard, and it's a lot of work to come together for an evening like this. And so I just want to say a big thank you to Billy for all that you do.
I just want to say real quick, I would be remiss if I didn't say a lot of people here are Chevra Kadisha volunteers who help in these sad moments, but I know that some of you are not, and certainly there are a lot of people watching on the live stream, and will watch the recording and will listen to your podcast. So if you're hearing this and you're interested in learning more about volunteering with the Chevra Kadisha, please reach out. We would love to have you. Thank you.